All right, interpersonal students, we're now on part 3 on the theories of relationship development. Today we're going to focus on social penetration theory, and we're going to learn one more theory about how this all comes together. Social penetration theory combines uncertainty reduction theory, some premises from that, and some premises from social exchange theory. So this is why you should watch the other 2 videos before watching this one, because we're going to be making references to the other 2 in this last one. Social penetration theory is known as the onion theory, not like How I Met Your Mother, the olive theory. This is a different vegetable that we're talking about here. So social penetration theory is a theory about how people move beyond initial encounters and explains how relationships develop over time. So it's going to take a little bit from uncertainty reduction theory because we're going to talk about how uncertainty gets reduced. But then we're going to take a little bit of social penetration theory in terms of social exchange theory in terms of how much people actually develop intimacy over time and how that forms a relationship. So really quickly here, just what is social penetration? So social penetration, if we write that down. Oh, and I spelled penetration wrong. There you go. Okay. So social penetration is simply the movement from superficial communication to more intimate. So superficial to intimate communication during relationship development. Okay, so when we're talking about social penetration, we're talking about the movement from superficial communication to more intimate communication. Now you might be wondering, why is this called the onion theory? Because you see like some onions up in here, right? So we're going to talk about that in the next slide, but yes, there is a relationship to onions here. So here's our little onion diagram. So social penetration theory suggests that there's an onion metaphor that represents aspects of a person's personality, which are comprised of 3 dimensions. So the first dimension is the peripheral layer. So the peripheral layer, or the outside layer, either one, is basically biographical characteristics that are generally perceivable or disclosable. So your sex, your age, your personal history. And you can kind of see outside here on the outside layers biographical data in this little chart here. So this is stuff that's often perceivable that you don't mind sharing with generally people. Where are you from? What's your favorite subject? Those kinds of things. What's your age? Now, age can be somewhat personal, but, we are often willing to at least tell us when our birthdays are, if not the year, but at least the dates, and so forth. But then you have intermediate layers. And your intermediate layers are attitudes and opinions about various issues. So you notice here that, you start, like if you look at the intermediate layers, preferences in food and clothes, and then you get a little bit more like goals and aspirations, so we start to get a little bit deeper here as far as the intermediate layers go. So these are like attitudes and opinions. Okay, if you want something written there. And then lastly, you have the central layers. And the central layers relate to like fears, things that you're afraid of, your self-concept, and basic morals and values. So notice here you have deeply held fears and fantasies, concept of the self, religious convictions. All of these are very central in nature, okay? So now, is it always the case that one's religious convictions are, central layer? Can they be peripheral? There could be. There's, people can vary in their personalities, and maybe there's something that you don't mind sharing with the world. Maybe that if you're somebody who maybe was a former drug addict and now you share with everybody because that's your whole motivational speaking tour is you were a former drug addict and now you're reformed and all that. So there is that aspect to things. So, but this is just kind of like a general, gives you an idea that there are some things that are very near and dear to us that we don't share with everyone, that is personal and is really central to who we are and what we believe and how we think. And then there are other topics that, we don't mind sharing with other people, other information that, we just would share with pretty much anyone. Now, if you've been paying attention to the previous video lectures, do you remember the 4 layers of talk? What are the 4 layers of talk? Remember this? So remember, we have cliches, facts, beliefs, opinions, and personal questions. Oh, look, this seems to line up with the layers of the onion. Aha, yes, child, yes, you get it. Okay, so this is kind of theoretical justification now for the 4 layers of talk, because you can see how certain topics kind of relate to a specific layer. Cliches are very outside, facts are kind of like in the middle, and in the inside, beliefs and opinions, and all that. So social penetration theory essentially says that over time, we start to penetrate our onions a little bit more to get into deeper topics. So that's kind of like the quick little thesis of social penetration theory. And specifically, upon first meeting, people have to decide first whether the interaction or relationship is rewarding. That's the first thing that people decide when they first meet. Rewarding can mean liking someone or just enjoying being around them. So upon first meeting, you're going to quickly decide, is this person rewarding or not? This is why first impressions matter, because we're already going to decide, very quickly, is this an interaction that's going to be rewarding to me? Is this person going to be rewarding, likable, somebody who I can talk to and share things with? Now, as we interact with someone, we have something called a central memory reservoir. I always have to make sure how to spell that. Okay, so it's Reservoir. Reservior. Okay, sorry, I can't make that a song. Okay. So the central memory reservoir is essentially our memory and recollection of rewards and costs over time interacting with someone. And essentially think of it as like our memory of you. And it's kind of like a register that keeps track of the rewardingness of talking to you and also the costliness of talking to you. Okay, so this is where kind of like keeping score, social exchange theory comes into play here. Now, as I get to know you, or as you get to know somebody, you're going to make forecasts of projected rewards and costs in the future. Will it be rewarding to see this person again? So maybe after your first coffee conversation with someone, you might decide, this is really rewarding and I enjoy talking to this person. They make me feel good, they're likable, and so forth. Then as you interact more and see this person more, you're going to start having permeability. Okay? What is permeability? Permeability, so I have 2 eyes here. Okay, so permeability is the ability to move between layers and layers of talk more quickly and easily. Self-disclosure in a high permeability relationship means that I can quickly self-disclose personal information to you because I'm comfortable with you and I know that you're trustworthy, and it doesn't take a lot of work for me to open up to you. When you have low permeability in a relationship, what that means is if I want to share personal information with you, it's going to take a lot of work. Like you're going to have to warm me up to the idea, and I may not tell you everything, and you might have to like kind of fish it out of me because it's low permeability, because I don't really trust you or I don't really know you enough, and so it's low permeability. So the idea is the more closer you are, the more intimate you are, the more permeable your topics are. And like one topic pivots to another deep topic. So you have topical pivots happening all over the place into deeper topics, and you kind of see people really getting to know each other. In fact, according to social penetration theory, there are 4 stages. So first you have orientation. And the orientation phase, this is when people are making small parts of themselves accessible, but nothing more. This is heavy on cliches and desirable modes of response. So there's a lot less reluctance to criticize, or there's more of a reluctance to criticize, and people generally just use social convention. Okay, so orientation, social convention, you're careful is the idea. Okay? But then you hit a second phase, which is called exploratory affective exchange. And here, casual acquaintances or friendly neighbors have this. There's some increases in spontaneity and voluntariness of disclosure. Comments are still limited and temporary, but most relationships don't proceed along this stage or past this stage. So yeah, I mean, you share some information together. You're not just stuck in the, hey, how are you? Good. Good. How are you? Good. Okay. So now you're like, oh yeah, I had a good day today. It was cool. Saw some people. It was nice. But like you're not super personal or intimate. Okay. Then you have affective exchange. So affective exchange with an A, not effective. An affective exchange is usually with like close friends and people who are dating. Now you have an extensive history of, freewheeling and loosely talking about topics. Now you're talking about more intimate areas of your personality. You're starting to open up. So maybe in like stage 1, you're like just out here, and maybe there's certain topics that you stay away from. So like maybe you just talk about work in stage 1, but then maybe in stage 2, maybe you start to talk about like politics, maybe just a little bit. Maybe you talk about the news a little bit. But now you're like stage 3, you start talking about sex, or you start talking about religion. And then stage 4 is stable exchange. And this is only achieved in few relationships. And this is where you have openness and richness in your relationships. You talk about very intimate things. So this is like your stage 4, like you're really deep. You'll talk about anything too. So like in stage 1, maybe you just talk about work and family and that's it. Like you limit your partner and it's very shallow. But then like stage 2, you talk about work and you talk about family, but at a deeper level. And then maybe you also talk about money. You see what I'm saying? So it just depends on your relationship with your partner as to what topics are going to be part of your regular interactions and where you'll go deeper and where you won't go deeper. But the idea is that in stable exchange, you do this very quickly. You have very easy permeability. You just go in and out like that. Versus, let's say you had low permeability, then everything's kind of a brick wall. You're just like there. And like it's hard for you to go anywhere. Okay? Like very low permeability. Now, uncertainty of outcomes of venturing into more intimate topics. So one of the reasons relationships might have low permeability is because of uncertainty. Okay? So low permeability. So we're going to do low perm, like chicken parm, low perm. Okay? Uncertainty, right? I don't know how you're going to react if I share this really deep thing with you. Okay? So there's like a lot of uncertainty. And so the growth of the relationship, it will be a direct function in which the good or satisfying aspects of the interaction outweigh the bad. So if you want somebody to open up to you, you have to start with whatever they give you and give them good feedback and to make it rewarding the little information that they do tell you. And then they can start to warm up to you and tell you more things because they know they'll be more certain about how you'll react. Now, there are some limitations to social penetration theory, of course. Number 1, development's not always linear. Okay, and this is also going to be true when we talk about the next model here. And layer meanings can vary. So like we said, some things that are personal to you may not be personal to me, and some things that might be personal to me might not be personal to you. So it's kind of like, sometimes it's hard to falsify, sometimes it's hard to say, like, was this intimate or was this not? Are they already in level 4 even though, they've just been talking for 5 minutes, or is just this a topic that everyone's very open about? So, it's very contextual and personal for sure. Contextual, and so like the setting in which you meet, and personal. Now, using social penetration theory, there's been a whole model of relationship development called the staircase model of relationship development by Knapp and Evangelisti. And basically it starts with initiating the relationship. So this is when you first meet. Then experimenting, where you just kind of engage in small talk. Then intensifying, you start finding some topics that you agree on. Integrating, you start sharing more intimate stuff. And then bonding, like you declare your relationship as like, we are besties, or we're boyfriend and girlfriend, or whatever. And then over time, you can stabilize, so you can move up and down. But then you can also just stabilize as initiating. You can stabilize and just stay experimenting and so forth. The opposite of relationship development, starting from bonding, differentiating. So here, with integrating, you are finding commonality. Differentiating, now you're looking for differences. With circumscribing is where you start to avoid topics. Intensifying is where you're finding more topics to talk about. Circumscribing is where you start to avoid. Stagnating, so basically not really talking anymore, like just not making effort to really do anything additional, just bare minimum. Experimenting, you're at the beginning of a relationship, but at least you're trying. Stagnating, you're at this point, but you're not doing anything. Instead of with avoiding, you're avoiding the partner. So you try to not talk to them. Like if they come into the room, you like leave before they come in, like ignore their calls and so forth. Initiating is the opposite, when you are making efforts to get to know the partner. You are making efforts to be within proximity of the partner. And then terminating. Terminating is the opposite of bonding, okay? So bonding is saying we're together. Terminating is saying we're not together. We're not best friends. We're not brother and sister or whatever, okay? So that's a very quick view of the staircase model. You're welcome to pause the video and rewind and watch it again if you think you need to know each stage, but just be generally aware of the idea that there's this dissolution here and development here. And then what you can see here are examples of what talk looks like in each stage. So initiating, it's the hi, how are you? Good, Experimenting, oh, so you like to ski, so do I. Experimenting, intensifying. Okay, so you're finding topics and you're starting to express feelings. Integrating, we're like, you're starting to express more feelings and like being one together. Bonding, declaring your relationship essentially. Then differentiating, I don't like big social gatherings, circumscribing, and so forth. So you can read them down the list and you can see kind of what talk looks like in each stage. Now, a lot of people, when they are exposed to this, are like, oh, am I in circumscribing with my partner? That kind of thing. So, sometimes you move within stages, but you can always move forward. You can always move back. So if you're circumscribing, then perhaps maybe what you need to do is just, talk to them and see what they're circumscribing about and understand maybe why they might be doing that. So, maybe you have to go back to experimenting, find some new topics to talk about. So don't think that because you're like circumscribing that you're doomed to terminate now. No, you're just in this phase, but you can definitely move back, okay? Or maybe you'll just stagnate and circumscribe the rest of your time. Who knows, okay? So, but this is a good little roadmap to kind of see how a relationship develops over time. When you do your coffee conversations, maybe you were here, like with your partner the first time, but maybe the second time, maybe you'll be here or here. Who knows? In conclusion, relationship development is all about, number one, topics. We go back to topics and conversation and specifically exploring, and not only just exploring topics, but superficial to intimate is one of the ideas. Another common theme is rewards. You have to be rewarding if you want to have relationships with people, meaning that you shouldn't be a drag on them. Like you shouldn't, and when I say drag, just mean like don't do things that make people feel bad. So that's where face theory really comes into play, right? Always save face. Try to find ways to work with people's face identities. And you can still be an honest person. You can still be a caring person. You can still tell people the truth, but find out how to tell people the truth with grace, okay? And then lastly, certainty. A lot of issues in relationships are rooted in uncertainty. Try to keep your partner certain is one of the key things that you can do in a relationship. Certain about who you are, what you do, and where you are with them in the relationship. If you can do these three things, you can have some great relationships with a good start.